So Esther, you were talking about private equity firms this week in the cover. Now here's the thing, right? I've always thought that private equity firms have always been around anyway. They've always, to me, struck as like one of the alternative sources of funding. But are they coming more into the spotlight now? Is that why we're talking about them?
I think, yeah, you're right to say that they've been around. Actually, they've been around probably for many, many decades.
Yeah.
But I guess why we brought this topic up like in the cover this week is because we're starting to see like a little bit more private equity activity, like especially in Malaysia. And I guess also because companies or business owners are in Asia especially a bit getting more receptive to the idea of private equity firms.
So why do you think they're getting more receptive to PE as a funding source? I mean, what do you think held them back previously from looking at PEs?
I guess, okay, from when we spoke to some of the PE firms, it's probably because they used to have this idea that, you know, when a PE comes in, they're going to buy up the company and they're going to take away the business from you. Like, yeah, correct. So now, because there's more education as well, so some PEs have the mandate of, you know, we're just going to take a strategic stake. We're going to help you run the business. We are not interested in taking the business away from you. So yeah, that helps a lot, I guess, in education process.
So okay, because unlike IPOs, which I think if you're a seasoned investor, you kind of know what happens with the listing and the due and everything. But when PEs come in, as you mentioned, some of them take strategic stakes, but are there some that are just silent investors, or do they usually have at least a say in how some things are run?
I guess it also depends on their mandate.
Yeah.
So what PE firms are doing more these days, I guess, is also to help the companies themselves to run the business, to bring it to a bigger scale, probably to also perhaps make them ready for listing if that is what the business owner wants.
But speaking of listing, you did point out, and I thought this was, okay, the IPO market over the past couple of years, it's no surprise that it's been very slow or dull. And the excuse that usually people give is that we're running out of good companies to list, which I don't think is actually that true. But now with PE, and people are not scrambling anymore for like their funds, is that why we haven't seen as many listings, you think, or at least the pipeline's dried up?
There are many reasons. One of it is because also the market conditions. You know, it's kind of depressed. You might not even get the valuations that you want to go for listing. And then, you know, listing is a really big exercise. It's costly and it's a long process. So you want to make sure that when you go to list, you get the right kind of valuations and people actually appreciate your company for it.
Right.
So another reason is because there's also a lot of money in the PE market as well.
Oh yeah, globally. You did mention that. That's like, you call it dry powder, that's the term they have. It's something like 1.02 trillion US dollars.
Globally, there's 1.02 trillion dollars. So it's really, you know, so much, so much money in PE firms. Globally, capital ready to be deployed into the right deals.
So that's why they actually pick that rather than IPO, you think?
The process is easier, I guess, because there's less people to deal with, right? Less stakeholders to deal with. So with a PE, you just deal with the PE firm, and then you can get your capital. You probably, you know, talk to them on how you want to manage the company. But with an IPO, once you go public, you have to deal with so many stakeholders, not just your investors, you have to deal with regulators.
You have to deal with us, actually, technically, media
correct?
as well.
Yeah, the media as well, yeah.
So it's a lot of things, balls to kind of juggle. Okay, I get that. And I suppose also if you are a flourishing company like maybe Grab or Go-Jek, sometimes you want to grow without the glare of the spotlight on you.
So you want to make sure you can grow, up to a significant size,
an Uber size or
something. Bigger size before perhaps thinking of going for a listing.
All right. But we did mention the figure, which is global, but in Malaysia, are we seeing the emergence of more PE guys? Definitely.
Well, the PE guys in Malaysia would say that the PE market in Malaysia is still a bit slow. Not so much activity yet, but they foresee it to grow in the coming years.
Why do they think it's going to grow though?
One of the reasons is because they think that they believe that Malaysian companies are kind of fragmented. Businesses are kind of fragmented.
Right.
So
fair enough.
Yeah, when they consolidate, there's a potential for PE firms to come in and to help them to do that, to take them to a bigger scale.
But eventually PE firms will want to exit.
Yes, that's right.
So what is the exit strategy? Isn't it ironic that it goes back to IPO?
Yeah, so the most common strategy is probably to go for an IPO. There's also, a strategic sale, which what PE companies do is they either sell it to another PE firm or they sell it to an interested company which has sort of the same business, then they exit.
Okay, for companies, definitely PE seems to be like a good funding option to raise things. But as an investor, is there a downside?
Well, I guess from an investor point of view, if I were an investor on Bursa, I guess I wouldn't be too pleased if a PE firm comes and take a company off the market. But as a business owner, I'll be really happy if they're willing to pay me premium, especially if the stock market doesn't appreciate my company when it's on the stock market, the exchange.
But can you look at it this way? As an investor, maybe if PE firms get in, you may have a chance to own a chunk of a bigger company.
Yeah, perhaps in the future, when the company has grown to a bigger size, it's stable, it has growth, stable growth, good profits, then yeah.
For more on the stories, pick up a copy of The Edge Weekly at all good newsstands.